Hi my crafty creatures, and thank you for tuning into this video. This one's going to be a little bit longer because we're going to be doing a sew along for this pattern right here, and it is the Butterick pattern, and it is the 6295 pattern. This pattern has 2 pairs of yoga pants, a sports bra, and a sports top, I guess you would call it. So if you want to see what I did to make pattern D, stay tuned to the video, and I will catch you at the end where I'll give you my notes and thoughts on this pattern. Thank you for continuing on with this video. The first thing I want to talk about is your pattern itself. Now when you go out to buy your pattern, if you don't already have it, you want to make sure that you're buying the right size, and usually they'll say right here on the top corner what sizes it'll be, but it also has it on the back as well. And to know what size that you need to get, you'll have to know your measurements, and that'll be your bust line, your waistline, and your hip line. So once you figure out that, then it'll be easier to narrow down which pattern you'll need to get. It'll also tell you on the back side of here how much fabric you'll need for each sizes. So once you know your size, then you can easily find out how much you'll need of each fabric, and it'll also have your notions and any other things that you'll need to make that item. So once you figure all of that out, then you're ready to get started on cutting out your pattern pieces. So I've actually gone ahead and cut out all my pieces. You'll have the instructions in here, and it'll tell you which pieces you'll need for which patterns, because each one of these will be numbered. So like this one has the number 15 on it, so that'll be one of the pattern pieces that I'll need for this pair of yoga pants I'll be making. So once you get all your pieces cut out, then you'll be able to cut it out on your fabric. And in my case, I'm actually using 3 different fabrics. This one's going to be the main fabric, and then these are going to be some contrasting fabrics. Actually using this one for the waistband, so I only got 1/4 of a yard of this, using this as part of the side piece on the leg, and I got 1/2 yard of this one. And then here I have 1 yard and 12 inches. So that's what I needed for mine, and for your sizing, depending on what size you are, you might need something a little bit different. Okay, so now I'm just going to lay out my pattern pieces. What I like to do is I like to use a rotary cutter. So I like to have these washers that I use as fabric weights, and that just holds the pieces into place while I'm cutting around. And I just place them randomly throughout, just making sure that the pattern is laying as flat as possible, and that any pieces that would normally bump up are just laying flat. Or you can just pin the fabric and use your scissors, and that'll work just as well. Here I'll just go ahead and start cutting around the pieces. And I'll actually stop it here, and then when I come back, I'll have all my pieces cut. Okay guys, now that I have all of the pieces cut out, I'll just go back through with the pattern pieces and mark any of the markings that are on the paper onto my pattern pieces. This one does tend to be a little easy, so I won't be marking everything because I will be doing some adjustments to it, mainly on this piece here. It's meant to be ruffled at the bottom, and I don't really like ruffles, so I'm just going to cut it to the length that it needs to be. I just cut it at the full length because I wasn't sure where it would need to stop at, and I can just do that as soon as I put the pieces together. Alright, so now we're about to go on to sewing the pieces together, and I'm going to switch over to doing a voiceover so I can make sure that I can get all the information in there for you guys. Before I get started, I set my tension to 2, and then I use the original settings. You'll want to start off with your 2 front pieces and just pin them together, making sure that your right sides are together. Then you'll do a stitch 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, and then go back and do it 1/4 of an inch to the right of that stitch. Doing this will make sure that your seam is secure. Now you'll just trim the threads and also trim off some of the excess fabric on the right side of the seam. You will also need to do this for the back piece as well once you get to it. Moving on to your 4 pocket pieces, You'll take 2 of them and place them right sides together, and then you'll sew on the diagonal line. You'll do this 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, and then you'll trim the edge and then flip it right sides out. For this next part, you'll need to do a basting stitch, and you'll need to do your stitch width as long as possible. For the basting stitch, you'll want to do it 1/2 inch away from the edge, and you'll want to do this on all 3 edges, and this will be so that you won't see it once you sew it all your pieces together. I lost the recording of this, but I basted the pocket to the upper part of the middle leg section, and then I also added the netting that I have right here in white to the bottom of that, and then did a straight stitch across, and then folded it down, and then did another top stitch on top of that. After finishing the top stitch, I trimmed away the excess fabric that was underneath. For this part, it calls for you to either serge the edge or use a zigzag stitch, but I was having a lot of issues with using the zigzag stitch and I don't have a serger, so I decided to go with a different process to sew. So instead of using the zigzag stitch, I did what's called a felled seam, and the way I did that was I placed the edge of the black fabric 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, and then I sewed a 5/8 inch seam allowance from the edge of the white fabric. Now flipping the right side up, I do a top stitch, making sure that the seam is going towards the black fabric, and then I just top stitch all the way up the fabric, and then I'll trim off the excess once I'm finished. This will be the same process that I'll use for attaching all of the pieces onto the pants. At this point, I also trimmed the white netting so that it will be the same length as the pants. Now it's time for the back piece of the pants, and we're doing the same 5/8 stitch away from the edge, and then going back and doing a 1/4 of an inch away from that stitch, and then we'll just trim off the excess fabric. Now I'm taking the upper back piece and attaching it using the same process for the side of the pants, and I'm just going to attach it, making sure that it is 3/8 of an inch away from the edge and doing a 5/8 seam allowance, and then flipping that over and doing a top stitch on top of that, and then trimming off all excess fabric. Now we're going to repeat this same process going on both sides of the fabric, and this will attach both legs to each other. Now moving on to the inseam of the pants, you'll want to pin it all together, and for me I did take a little bit out of the leg, and I took about maybe an inch away to make it more of a tighter fit, but I ended up later thinking that I needed to take a little more off of that, so that can be an adjustment that you may or may not have to do. After adding my markings, I'm starting from the middle seam and going down one pant leg and then going down the other one. Now this, you'll be using the double stitch. You'll do one at a 5/8 of an inch, and then you'll do another one a 1/4 of an inch away from that. And you'll do this going down both pant legs, and then that'll close it up for you. Now that the pant legs are done, it's time to move on to the waistband. You'll want to pin them together, and then you'll sew a straight stitch along both sides of the short end of it. And you'll do this for both pieces that you have. Putting the right sides together, you'll want to put one of the waistband pieces inside of the other. And then you'll want to do a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch, attaching them together about a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Also, with the wrong side still facing together, you'll want to do a second stitch that's going to be at least 1/2 an inch wider than your elastic that you will be putting in. Using the pattern as a guide, you'll mark out where you need to cut your elastic, and then you can do this, or you can also just place it around your waist and measure that way. Now you can take a safety pin and use it to feed the elastic through the loop that you created, making sure that you smooth and stretch the fabric so that you can pull the elastic all the way through. Once you've pulled the elastic through, you'll want to sew it together to complete the loop, and then you'll want to stretch it out so that it goes back into the loop that you've made. Once you've closed up the casing for the elastic, you'll want to do a basting stitch for the bottom part of the elastic, and you'll do this by flipping the right sides out to encase the elastic, and then you'll do your basting stitch about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch from the edge, and then you'll attach it to your pants by using the same process that you used before. The last thing that is left to do is just to sew up the bottom of the pants, and you'll do that by doing either a basting stitch or a very tight zigzag stitch, and you'll just do that along the edge. You can do this double, or you can just do it once along the bottom edge of it. And now you're done. Thank you for staying tuned to this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and like I said in the beginning, I'm going to let you know my notes. So I thought this was a really good pattern. It allows you to have that room for error, and you can also adjust it in little ways so it can better fit you. And the fabric that I ended up using was from Joann, and I really like the way it feels, the way it moves, and the way it hangs on my body. So I really would suggest that if you can get a hold of that. If not, then you can find some other fabrics that'll be along the same line. And you guys, for staying tuned to the video, I'll let you know something else. I just started an Etsy shop, so I have a few things in there, and this will actually be one of the things that I'll have on my shop. I just will be using different fabrics than the one I used here, just because I can't really always get a hold of that exact same fabric. But I'll have different styles on there, and I'll let you know whatever you can get. And I'll be adding more stuff to it soon. So please stay tuned and check out my Etsy shop, and I'll leave the link of everything down below. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.